I'm Nora, and this year's Thanksgiving has carved itself into my life like a blow I'll never forget. My family. They made up a lie to keep me from coming, but the worst part? Do you know what it was? Everyone else was at that table except for me. They were laughing and joking around, while I was outside in the cold, all alone, losing all the warmth inside me. Why? Because I'm just an AC technician. I have a regular, plain, nothing special kind of life in their eyes. But here's the irony. The sister sitting at the head of the table, Mia, who's in law school, I'm the one who's paying for her education. Yeah, the sister who didn't invite me, didn't even bother introducing me to her family. I've been the one covering her tuition, her rent, her textbooks for years. I'm the one who wasn't worthy of being at that table. And that night, I made a decision. A silent, but life-changing decision. On a gray evening in Seattle, the neon sign outside my workshop flickered. As I was closing the shop, the cold metal was numbing my fingertips, but there was an odd sense of peace inside me. For the first time in years, I had planned everything for Thanksgiving in advance. I had organized my work schedule, paid my employees their bonuses early, and carefully picked out a bottle of wine. I was going to my family's house, for celebration, for sharing, for a warm dinner, or at least, that's what I thought. As soon as I got in my car, my phone rang. It was Mom on the screen. I smiled. This was probably just one of those usual calls, where she asks which pie I'm bringing this year. But her tone, it changed everything. "Nora, honey, I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving," my mom said. There was hesitation in her voice, a kind of fragility I didn't recognize. Normally, she spoke sharply, quickly, and clearly. But this time her voice was trembling as if she was walking on eggshells. "What's going on?" I asked, gripping the wheel as I started driving. "Well, your dad and I were thinking, maybe it would be better if you didn't come this year." "What?" I slammed on the brakes. The car jerked suddenly. "What do you mean? We always do this dinner together." Mom sighed. "This year, it's going to be a little more formal. Mia's boyfriend Daniel is bringing his family in Bofto. We thought it would be better to keep it just close family." I swallowed. "Close family? I'm your daughter." "Of course you are, sweetie," she said quickly, but her tone was coated with a fake kind of sympathy. "But you know, these people are a little selective. Mia needs to make a good impression on them." And in that moment, I saw the truth, raw and unfiltered. In my family's eyes, I wasn't good enough. Because I didn't wear a suit, I didn't walk around offices, and I didn't have CEO on my business card. My job was so ordinary, it was almost laughable to them. Yet I made my living through hard work, providing people with warmth and comfort. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "So the issue is that I'm a technician, right?" I asked, my voice rising. "Nora, don't take this personally. It's just a dinner. Maybe we can have breakfast together next week?" That offer felt so shallow, so diminishing. Without answering, I hung up the phone. Sitting in my car, my arms were shaking. But it wasn't the cold. It was anger. It was heartbreak. It was stupidity. I had been there for Mia all these years. When she started college, I paid every penny so she could start debt-free. I bought her textbooks. I paid her rent. Sometimes I didn't even buy myself a new winter coat, just so she could have an easier time studying in law school. And now I didn't have a place at the table because I was too ordinary to represent my family. Then a message came through from my cousin, Elena. "I need to tell you something about Thanksgiving." I hesitated at first, but I opened it. I overheard my mom and Mia talking. Mia said if Daniel's family meets someone from the working class, they'll look down on me, and she flat out said she didn't want you there. My eyes locked on the screen. My heart felt like it was going to explode in my chest. There it was, nothing left to hide. It wasn't just my mom who didn't invite me. It was Mia's decision, too. Mia, who couldn't even face her own sister, who turned her back and quietly shut the door on me. My sister had turned her back on me. She was ashamed of me. Because I'm blue-collar, she had denied me. But now it was time to make a decision. If I couldn't find a place at that table, then my money wasn't going to find a place at that school either. That night, I couldn't sleep. As I tossed and turned in bed, I stared at the empty space on the ceiling, as if I were looking for an answer about myself up there. Something inside me had shattered, but strangely, I was starting to see more clearly. I'd always been the helper, The quiet one who gave, supported, and stayed in the background. Even when I was a kid, it was like that. Mia would break something, and I'd take the blame. She'd drop her grades, and I'd make myself guilty in front of our parents because Mia was such a sensitive child. And years later, when that same sister turned her back on me, I stayed silent. In a word, quiet. But I wouldn't stay silent anymore. By morning, the chaos inside me had been replaced with a quiet clarity. There were bags under my eyes, but not from lack of sleep. They were from holding back tears. I brewed my coffee in the kitchen, but this time, it wasn't like usual. It felt like a war morning, not a fall one. I cupped my mug in my hands and sat down at my desk. I opened my laptop. Almost reflexively, I logged into the university's payment system. My fingers typed the password without a thought. This screen wasn't unfamiliar to me. I'd been making Mia's school payments on this site for years. Even my bank information was saved in the system. I'd always made the payments on time, without delay, every semester. But this time my cursor moved to a different place. Remove payment method. I clicked it. A warning box popped up. This action cannot be undone. Are you sure you want to continue? Without blinking, I clicked yes. And then something happened. The moment I closed my laptop, a weight lifted off me. That whisper that had been in my head for years stopped. Maybe you're not good enough. Maybe if you sacrifice a little more, you'll be accepted. No, enough was enough. But if you want to know how I felt, it wasn't guilt. It was lightness. Like fresh air. Like a deep breath. This wasn't my responsibility anymore. It was Mia's. And I'd pulled it off my back. My phone began to vibrate on the kitchen counter. The screen showed the same name again. Mom! She called once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th call, I answered. Nora, she said, her voice sharp and angry like an alarm. Mia just called me. She was hysterical. The school payment hasn't been made. Is this true? Without losing my calm, I took a sip of my coffee. Good morning to you too, Mom. Don't play games with me, she snapped. Tell me, why are you cutting Mia's school payment? I'll tell you, I said, my voice calm, almost cold, because I don't want to sponsor her education anymore. The silence on the phone was so thick, it felt like a wire stretched tight between us. Nora, what you're doing, this is cruel. Cruel? I said, a smile almost slipping into a laugh. The cruel part is that your daughter sees me as a source of shame. The cruel part is that for years I've made payments without question, and now I'm not even worthy of a seat at a dinner table. That's cruel. Look, sweetie, she said, her voice heavy with guilt. Mia is young. She can make mistakes. She might not know what she's saying. I mean, remember what you said when you were young? Mom, I said, my voice sharp now. Mia is 24, a full-grown woman, and instead of holding her accountable, you're still trying to rein me in. There was a pause on the phone. The scripted responses she usually had were stuck in her throat. You promised, Nora, she said finally. You promised to support Mia until she graduated from college. Do you know what my promise was? I said. It was to support my sister. But that person is gone. In her place is a selfish, ungrateful person. I owe her nothing. My mom was silent. I could hear her take a deep breath. You're the one who's tearing the family apart, she said slowly. You're breaking it, Nora. No, Mom, I said. I'm just setting boundaries. Those two things are not the same. And in that moment, I realized, for the first time I was speaking, for the first time in years, I heard my own voice. When I hung up the phone, my heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear. It was from courage. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. When Mia found out, she wouldn't stay quiet. Just like they'd done for years, they'd scream at me, blame me. But this time, I was ready. Because I wasn't just their daughter, their sister, or their financial source anymore. I was myself. The next morning, I had barely taken a sip of my coffee when my phone started ringing like crazy. Mia's name popped up on the screen. Then another call, followed by a message. Then another call. I didn't answer. I could already guess what she was going to say. Panic, blame, playing the victim. And I owed her none of it. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, I got a voicemail. I played it with a feeling of emptiness inside. Nora, what's going on? The university called me. They said payment hasn't been made. They're telling me they'll deregister me. This must be a mistake. Please call me back right away. The panic in her voice was real, but I just kept sipping my coffee. She deserved that message. Years of being ignored, denied, brushed aside. It was time for her to carry some of that burden now. Then another message came. Nora, this is crazy. If the payment isn't made, my registration won't be renewed. You can't do this to me. My fingers hovered over the phone. I wanted to write, "You've been doing this to me for years," but I deleted it. Arguing with her meant still being part of that game. Silence was going to be the most powerful answer. But Mia wasn't about to stay silent. This time, she tried a different tactic. A few hours later, she showed up at Daniel's apartment and knocked on his door. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were panicked. When Daniel opened the door, he had a look on his face as if he didn't recognize her for the first time. Mia walked into the apartment and started pacing. She was holding her head with both hands, trying to resist the reality that was dawning on her. Damn it. Nora left me completely high and dry. I'm about to get kicked out of school. I don't get it. She didn't even give me a warning. Daniel closed the door slowly and asked, Nora? Mia turned her head. Yeah, my sister. I mean, she was the one supporting my education. Daniel furrowed his brow. Wait a second. Nora was making your university payments? I always thought your mom and dad were paying for that. Mia hesitated for a moment. It was as if she was weighing which lie to pick in the space of a few seconds. Well, mostly they. But Nora helped out, you know, she said, shrugging. Daniel's voice had turned cold. How much did she help? For the first time, her mask cracked. Well, I guess most of it. Maybe all of it. Daniel's silence was the first thing that really shook Mia, because what she saw in his eyes now wasn't doubt. It was certainty. So you're telling me the person who paid your school fees for years, the one who wasn't even invited to that dinner, the one you never said a word about, was your sister? Mia lowered her head. It wasn't her choice, she mumbled. Daniel put his hands on his head. But it was your choice. You didn't even mention her name. You told your family everything about us, but never said a word about your sister. Why, Mia? Mia suddenly raised her voice. Because you wouldn't understand. She's different. She's from the working class. When my people see someone like her, would you judge her? Would you be ashamed of her? Daniel asked, his voice sharp as ice. Mia's eyes filled with tears. But this time, there was no compassion on Daniel's face. The truth is, Nora gave you everything. And you couldn't even offer her a chair. Then Daniel stopped. He grabbed his coat. I want to be alone for a while, he said. Mia walked toward the door, but stopped. She waited for a sound behind her. A don't go. Oh, we can talk about this. But nothing came. That night, as I sat in the silence of my own home sipping my coffee, a message came through on my phone. From Mia. I hope you're proud of yourself. You ruined my life. I stared at the screen. My eyes were cold. No, I didn't ruin her life. She had shattered it with her own hands. I just refused to pick up the pieces anymore. When I read Mia's last message, there was a strange calm inside me. I hope you're proud of yourself. You ruined my life. How strange, I thought to myself. If a whole life can be ruined with just a few clicks, then the foundation of that life was already rotten. As for my life, the one I once thought was rotten, the one I even believed was broken off from its roots just to make others more comfortable. Now, for the first time, it was standing solid. But the silence didn't last long. The first call wasn't from my mom this time. It was my dad. My stern, serious, quiet dad. Nora, this has gone too far, he said on the phone, his voice carrying more pressure than usual. You're punishing your own flesh and blood. No, Dad, I said, turning toward the window and looking at the gray sky outside. I'm just done paying the price. The next day, my aunt called, then my uncle. Cousins, family friends, even the elderly neighbors I only saw once a year when I was a kid. Everyone said the same thing, just with different words. You're the older sister, you need to stay the bigger person. What's money in the grand scheme of things? Family is everything. She's young. Forgive her. Be soft. But no one asked this question. What did Mia do to you? How did it get to this point? Because no one wanted to know. The truth would disturb their comfortable lives. That afternoon, during my lunch break at work, I grabbed my tea and leaned against the office window. The gray city outside reflected on the rain-soaked sidewalks. People were walking fast. No one's face was clear. Just then, the office door opened. Elena, my cousin, the one stuck in the middle of the family, but the only one who opened her eyes and saw the truth. Are you alone? She asked as she walked in. I've always been, I said with a bittersweet smile. She sat down in the chair. Silence. Then a deep breath. Did you see on social media? She asked. I nodded. I had. Mia's posts, those empty sentences with a clear target. Some people put money before family love. Someone you least expect might stab you in the back. There are people who smile on the outside but carry hatred in their hearts. Hundreds of comments below. How could they do this to someone like you? They didn't realize your worth, poor thing. The sister they call ungrateful. But no one knew my name. Because Mia never spoke directly. She only guided, manipulated. And people. They weren't looking to learn the truth. They were looking for emotional satisfaction. Elena sighed. You know, Nora, some of the comments had familiar names. Our old teacher, the neighbor lady, your mom's friends, they're all on Mia's side. I leaned back in my chair. Because my version is silent. When no one's yelling the truth, they'd rather not hear it. But the next day, even that silence was broken. After a business meeting, Mrs. Kramer, a client of mine for years, called me over. She had asked me to install new air conditioning units in her son's office. At the end of the meeting, she closed the folder in her hands and looked directly into my eyes. I have a question, Nora, she said. I'm going to speak openly because I've known you for years. But leaving your sister high and dry, was that really the right thing to do? The first thing that crossed my mind was to throw the pen I was holding across the table. But I didn't. I just slightly lowered my head. I think she's been leaving herself alone for years. I'm just not accompanying her anymore. Mrs. Kramer shook her head. Family is family no matter what. That's when the smile on my face faded. But my family has only been family when they needed me, I said. The rest was just silence. At that moment, I realized something. Mia wasn't just manipulating me anymore. She was trying to turn the world around me against me. She had started a silent war, playing the victim, gathering support, trying to isolate me. But I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore. That evening, I logged into social media. Family photos, indirect messages, dramatic hints. Mia's performance was in full swing. But I wasn't going to play that game. That night, I wrote just one sentence in my journal. I won't try to prove my existence to those who ignore me anymore. This is my silent revolution. The lunchtime meeting at the office was going full speed. New projects, client requests, system updates for the winter months. My employees were taking notes, and a focused silence reigned among the technical details. At that moment, everything was in order. That was until the glass door slammed open. There was no need to say the name of the person who entered the room. The silence recognized her before anyone else. Mia. She burst into the room so quickly it felt like my office wasn't a workplace, but a battlefield. Her hair was a mess, her under eyes were red, and she was panting for air. As soon as she stepped in, everyone's gaze turned toward her. You ruined my life, she screamed. I gently closed the file in my hand and set it aside. I took a deep breath. Welcome, Mia. Don't talk to me like that, with that stupid calmness, she hissed. How could you do this to me? I'm your sister. At that moment, she stood in front of me, looking straight into my eyes. My sister, who had ignored me for years, who hadn't even introduced me to her friends, was now attacking me to save her own face. I was your sister too, Mia, I said slowly but clearly. But that doesn't give you the right to make me a source of shame for years. The office was silent. My employees were watching without getting up from their desks, but focused. The tension in the air was so thick it felt like the windows might crack. "You're selfish," Mia shouted. "You only think about yourself. You've dragged my life to zero, ruined my education, destroyed my relationship, turned everyone against me." That's when I couldn't take it anymore and stood up. My voice didn't raise, but my tone sharpened. "No, Mia. I've just stopped paying the price for your lies. I'm not the guilty one just because people are now seeing your true face." Her eyes filled with tears, but those tears didn't affect me anymore. "You're throwing me out," she said, her voice trembling, her lips quivering. "No, I'm just teaching you how to walk, because I'm tired of being the one you lean on." At that moment, my senior technician Thomas slowly stepped in. "This is a workplace. Please stop causing any more disruption." Mia turned and glared at Thomas. "You don't even know who she really is. She's a self-centered, heartless woman," Thomas replied without blinking. "No, we know exactly who she is. You're the one who's just now learning." Those words shattered Mia's mask completely. For a brief moment, it felt like all her expressions froze on her face. Then, she quickly ran out of the office, slamming the door so hard the frame on the wall shook. I was still standing. A shiver ran through me. But it wasn't from fear. It was like I had just survived a battle. That night, my phone stayed silent. This time, it wasn't my mom. It wasn't my dad. No one called. But I knew. The final wave of the storm hadn't come yet. And the next morning, it came. I was settling into my chair to drink my morning coffee when my phone rang. The screen read, "Mom." I answered, because this time, I felt like there was still something unspoken between us. "Nora," my mom said, her voice tired, not sharp this time. "Mia's crying. She won't eat. She can't go back to school. Her future's at risk. What are we going to do now?" I stayed silent for a while. Then I quietly asked, "When did I become we in this family, Mom?" My mom went quiet. "Were we only we when I was a financial supporter?" I continued. "When there was no seat for me at the table, when my name wasn't mentioned in conversation, when my existence was a source of shame. Why weren't we then, but suddenly now we are?" "Nora, you've always had a soft heart," my mom said. "You've always been forgiving." "I'm still forgiving," I said, "but now I'm forgiving myself. For accepting being ignored, being dismissed, staying silent all those years. And this time, I didn't hang up the phone. She did. Only silence remained. Time is a strange thing. It passes the same for everyone, but for some, it's a balm. For others, it's a grave. For Mia, every passing day meant a little more downfall. For me, each morning, it meant a little more freedom. It had been 3 weeks since I removed myself from the payment system. No one in my family had called, and no messages asking for an explanation had come. Silence first brought peace, then meaning. Because some silences don't quiet the inside, they silence the outside. Inside, that echo still lingered. Did I do the right thing? Yes. Every morning, I asked myself the same question. And every morning, my answer became clearer. But for Mia, life was now a turbulent sea. First came the notice about the final payment for her school. Then the system sent a message. If payment is not made within 48 hours, your registration will be canceled. I could almost see her fingers trembling on that notification screen. She panicked and logged into the student portal, applying for a loan. But the banks already knew about her family's debt load. Loan rejected. The second time. Then the third. With each attempt, shorter responses, colder system messages. Financially risky application. High debt ratio. Application denied. Then she went to Daniel. With hope. But there was a wall there now. He wasn't her boyfriend anymore. He was just a former acquaintance standing in front of her. "Why did you hide the truth for all this time?" he had asked. "Why did you deceive me too?" Mia might have said, "to not lose you." But Daniel's determination in his eyes would bury every word she said as a lie. When she left that day, she was crying. But these tears were different. Because she was finally alone. For the first time, truly alone. And for the first time in her life, she had to look at her reflection in the mirror of that loneliness. As for me, that day, I was at work. The first snow had fallen outside. As I looked out the office window, I took a sip from my cup. Then my phone rang. It was Elena. Should I pick it up? I asked myself. Then I answered. Hi, Nora, my cousin said, her voice lower than usual, more nervous. How are you? For a moment, I thought about it. It had been a while since I heard a voice genuinely asking how I was. I'm not bad, I said. The silence is strange but peaceful. I wanted you to know, Elena continued. Mia dropped out of school. She couldn't renew her registration. Now she's at home with my mom. Her morale is 0, and she's stopped blaming you. I lowered my head, took a deep breath. When there's no one left to blame, a person looks in the mirror for the first time, I said. They're still angry, she continued. But they're not calling you anymore because they know they won't get an answer. What about you? I asked. I'm proud of you, she said. Someone had to set boundaries. You showed that courage. When I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of calm. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud of myself. I was happy for not carrying my family's expectations, not shouldering Mia's burden, and not being part of the lives of those who smiled in my face but ignored me behind my back. That night, I received a message from my mom. Christmas is approaching. We'd like you to be home. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long time. The old Nora would have replied immediately. She would have hoped. Maybe this time it's different. But I wasn't her anymore. This time, I didn't hope. I didn't wait. I didn't reply. Because now, silence wasn't guilt. It was freedom. The next morning, while I was reviewing new client files at work, my assistant walked in. Ms. Nora, a man came in. He doesn't have an appointment, but he wants to speak with you one-on-one. He says it's urgent. I looked up. Who is it? Daniel, she said. I hesitated for a moment, but then said yes. When he walked in, there was neither anger nor defense on his face. Just a request for an explanation. Nora, he said, I need to ask you something. Why did you stay silent all this time? Without waiting for me to sit down, I answered slowly. Because if I spoke, I would have ruined the story Mia told, and I'm not like her. The truth reveals itself. Daniel shook his head. It did, and though late, I see it now. That day, Daniel and I didn't talk for long. But when we looked into each other's eyes, for the first time, someone told me, not through words, but through their gaze, that I wasn't wronged, I was right. And that look, it replaced the validation I had been waiting for all these years, but never received. Christmas morning, and Seattle was gray again, but for the first time, I felt lighter inside. The raindrops gently tapping against my window seemed to wash away everything that had built up inside me over the years. That morning, I brewed my coffee, made myself strawberry pancakes, because my mom always said I didn't like them when I was a kid. But I did. I just never said so, because I knew it didn't match others' tastes. Now, in my own kitchen, with my own taste, in my own solitude. For the first time, I was truly myself. My phone stayed silent that morning. No messages, no calls, no indirect comments or accusations on social media. It was like everyone had given up. Maybe they finally understood. I wasn't coming back. And the best part, I didn't need to anymore. That day, I didn't go to work. Everything was running smoothly at the office anyway. New contracts, an expanding client base, a growing team. I was finally able to see my job, not as a belittling task, but as an identity I was proud of. The voices that had told me, you're just an AC technician, no longer echoed inside me. Because no one who carried that voice was in my life anymore. In the afternoon, my doorbell rang. I told myself I couldn't open it. But still, with that old habit that, what if something happened, feeling, I went toward the door. Mia. She stood there in the doorway. No makeup, no order to her hair. Her eyes were dark. Her shoulders slumped. We looked at each other in silence. She wanted to say something, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. I just wanted to see you, she finally said, her voice like cracking glass. I lowered my head. My heart sped up, but the word that came out of my mouth was clear. "You're too late." She took a step back. "I deserve this," she said. "But I wanted to thank you for everything. For the things you used to do, and the things you no longer do." For the first time, she looked honest. For the first time, she was standing in front of me without asking for anything. But I knew. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was a goodbye. "Mia," I said, "to make peace with you, I first had to fight with myself. And I just won that battle. For now, I need to be alone." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I know," she said. "And I'm sorry. Truly." I slowly closed the door. There was no anger in me, no bitterness. Only completion. As that door closed, the past closed with it. The long-worn fatigue inside me was replaced with a quiet sense of relief. That evening, I opened my computer. I decided to do something I had been putting off for years. I applied to open a new branch, to grow my own brand. Then I wrote the first lines of the guidebook I had wanted to write based on my work experience. And at that moment I realized that for all my life, I had built things for others. But now it was my turn. I was writing my own future, with my own hands. A few weeks later, I got a message from Elena. "Your mom still blames you, but your dad is silent. And you know what? People learn the most when they're silent." I smiled. Maybe they would change one day, maybe they wouldn't, but that didn't matter to me anymore. I had changed, and that was enough. One Sunday morning, with my coffee in hand and my red scarf swaying in the wind, I stood in front of the window of my new branch. The sign said, Callaway Solutions. My last name, which I used to carry with shame, had now turned into a source of pride for me. Because now, it wasn't how others saw me that mattered. It was how I saw myself. A passerby stopped, looked at the window. Then, turning to me, he asked, "Did you set this up yourself?" I held my head high. "Yes," I said, "with my own hands." And at that moment, something inside me sparkled. Freedom isn't like victory. It's quiet. It's noiseless. But the feeling it gives surpasses everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. In every new story, we grow stronger together, we start again together. Share your thoughts with us in the comments, because every voice can light someone else's journey. See you in the next story.